Welcome to Project Insight's Professional Development Series. Today's session, faster integrations using AI for on-time delivery, takes a practical look at how to use AI and automation to move faster without adding unnecessary complexity. While AI promises speed without clear outcomes and guardrails, it can actually create more noise, extra steps, and confusion. This session is focused on cutting through that and showing you how to apply AI in ways that truly support delivery. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone will be on mute. Please feel free to use the chat as we go along and ask questions. This session is good for one PDU. The certificate will be sent out before the end of the week. The trick is, as always, is you need to attend the full session. You can also access this recording here at the link you've joined from. My name is Mathew Sparks. I'm joined by Steve West, founder and CEO of Project Insight, and Diane Buckley-Alwies, CEO of Core Performance Concepts. Together, we'll share practical ways to speed up delivery while keeping projects on track. You guys ready to dive in?
Yes.
I think so. How about you, Steve?
Definitely. This is always a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm curious as to where we're going to take this, but it's all awesome. So, as Matt mentioned, we're trying to do everything faster, like everything faster. I don't know anybody that's not looking at AI in some way, shape, or form to improve their internal operations, to provide services to clients, to create brand new products. I mean, it's everywhere, and although it's very exciting, in some cases it's a little scary. But what we're going to talk about here today is ways in which technology, whether you're using AI or not, again, AI is not the magic pill for everything, but we can't have a conversation about doing things faster without the conversation of AI today. So we're all trying to do everything faster. One of the things that we've always talked about within our project management webinars here and with our PMP certifications and stuff, it's about having a process for deciding what you're working on. And the key thing here is, do we know why we're working on it? Do we have a charter? Do we have an understanding of what we're trying to get as an outcome? Because just expanding and using more technology and AI without any purpose isn't necessarily going to make you faster. You might be able to fail faster, but it may not have the right answer that you're looking for. So we're going to explore a lot of that today. And Steve, I know you've been in this business for a long time, and just scarce resources are everybody's problem. Mm-hmm. So we need to select what we're going to work on, right?
Definitely. It's definitely one of the hardest things, is just deciding what is most important.
Yeah, and if we take it into concept of iteration cycles, what we're going to talk through today are some places that we can improve our environments. And I wanted to look at it a lot from a project management standpoint, and on where we can see value to speed up the project management process, to make the project managers more efficient and effective, and also bring those iterations to our clients faster. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is just reducing friction. I mean, I when I'm putting this together, I was thinking, like, what are all the things that project managers do that aren't busy work, but they're tactical administrative activities that have to be done, have to be captured. And, but if we didn't have to do them, how much time could we free up? I mean, if we didn't have to write agendas, if we didn't have to do meeting minutes, if we didn't have to do project status, if we didn't have to do, portfolio statuses and narratives, how much time would we really free up from our day to be more efficient?
It could be
probably a lot.
Well, and also maybe you don't have time to do some of these things, but you can maybe using tools can help you bring them into the mix.
Or maybe you're not doing them well enough. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I mean, I know personally, I have definitely adopted AI with regard to meeting minutes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am totally acquiescing that process to the AI tool. There's things that I go through it, and if I'm just like recording it from a um, the video, or even it might mistaken me for somebody else in the office or in the meeting. So I've had things where I've had to correct where it was actually saying, well, Diane said she would give this to Debbie, when in reality it was Debbie said that she would give it to Diane. So you have to take the time to go through it, and there's different levels of detail. So so how much time are we spending on writing the minutes? How much time are we spending on editing those minutes? And is it truly more faster? Is that the right way? Is it truly faster?
Well, definitely having, when you're doing your Zoom calls or your Teams meetings, and having the ability to get the transcript and the summary from the built-in AI. I mean, that does save time. But yeah, I think the caution with that is don't just take what it says, make sure you review it.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to send off something that's wrong to an executive, with the wrong information.
But I mean, that's like the most obvious thing that, everyone should be. I bet pretty much every project manager is now using those tools because they're just kind of, they're there, and they're automatically there for you.
Right. And then also too, if you go back to when you think about project narratives and things like that, not everybody, we all know that not everybody needs the same level of detail. So don't get lazy, I guess is the point. If you're using technology, AI to do those narratives, you still need to think about who's the audience, what is it they're interested in, and make sure that the intent, and you can do that with some technology AI today too. It's like, this is going to be, directed at the CEO, and this is going to be, I want a summary directed at the COO. So you can do that kind of stuff. Just, I guess the point is, don't just blanketly use it and distribute it everywhere. I have one fear on this, is that we're going to end up with even more stuff in our inbox of meeting minutes that people are sharing.
Yeah, right. I think that's a lot of people's fears, Diane, right? Is I'm now inundated with other things, and now I'm going to have my AI read that and summarize it, and then, where does it get lost through all of that kind of disconnect, right?
Yeah, that's another level of concern.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So Matt, did you want to show?
Yeah, to kind of some of the points that we were mentioning, in that a lot of applications, a lot of the tools that we're using today have these kinds of pieces baked in at this point. Project Insight does as well. I think one of the big wins of having it within our tool, just like if I've got RAID log or lessons learned or any of the other pieces, right, that I may have associated with my project data, it's all in one central location here. So historically, we kind of talked about what did we used to do, and we used to come in here and say, hey, this was my weekly meeting or my stand-up or whatever it was, and here who was, in attendance, and these are the notes that we spoke about and all of that. We've made an enhancement here where now I can come in and just simply paste the transcript from the meeting that we had. I can allow Project Insight's, AI features to then generate my notes and my next steps and everything else for me. And this will depend upon, what pieces we're seeing will depend upon what we've enabled. So if I've not enabled action items, I don't see that on the meeting minutes because we've not turned that feature set on within our tool. But the goal of this is give that first pass, or really that, kind of accurate description of, I need Diane to do this. Steve, we made this decision on this meeting, right? We have identified a new risk that we need to make sure that the broader group has visibility into. So what we do, again, is we just simply paste that in. Project Insight will come in here and say who was in the meeting that was associated with my project plan. It will take the high level notes for me. It will associate those action items, those decisions, any tasks that might need to be done. I can, of course, edit these to the point that you were mentioning, Diane, earlier. If something's not right, right? Hey, we didn't ask Tyler to do this. We needed somebody else to do so. We can change all of those. But a lot of that manual busy work that we historically have had to go through to do something like this becomes automatic right here.
Right.
The added benefit is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but all of the notifications are sent out automatically. But then we can always go back in here if we save this and this is accurate. And not only will those action items hit my action item register or my risk or otherwise, I can double back into the meeting minutes, see the status of where these items were at. I can click on the individual item, which then ties back to that link of that meeting minute functionality. So the goal is I don't need to look here, look there, look in my inbox for what this is. It's in that same spot where we're executing our project work.
Right. So the discipline around managing your meetings and your minutes is changing, right? So it's like, you might have a meeting recorder, and now rather than you having to write stuff down and rekey it in, now it's like, okay, well, now I just want to bring it over into my Project Insight and let the system take care of that. And all I have to do then is review it. And then there's a discipline around making sure you review it, and not. So your role is changing to where you're not, you're able to, what I love is you're able to be more present in the meeting. Yeah, and you're not worrying about writing notes. I think it's an amazing opportunity there. And then as long as we stay disciplined with regard to validating, that the notes are accurate and that it's what we expected out of it, nothing was hallucinated on. It's a great, from my perspective, that's a huge win for any project manager.
Yeah, and there's a couple questions in the audience there that, when bringing into our tool for the meeting minutes, it is better to have the transcript, but it will work still with the summary. Yep. There was noted that the Zoom just is easy to get the summary. It's a little harder to get the full transcript. But coming back to that meeting minutes, it did pull in who the attendees were for you. It'll auto select those. It'll put if they're not a user of Project Insight, it puts them into the other people that were attending. And this is all stuff that everyone used to do via email. And the benefit of putting it into the tool using the transcript is that now that's quickly accessible to your project. So, we've all been there where, what did we say back in October? It's a lot harder to find that in your email than it is in like a tool like Project Insight. So this particular feature has been a lot more popular than we thought, but in hindsight, now that I see, okay, yeah, this does save a lot of time for a PM.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, I've even seen people paste in their email transcript, like the email content itself, and it'll read that and do the same piece with it. So, in this way, my project coordinator can spend more time doing other pieces, right? Or my BAs don't have to go in there and retype all of this. It's right here at our fingertips.
And if you're not a Project Insight user, you can still, AI can help you decipher transcripts. They do it. The tools sort of do it on their own, but look to us adding more in a tighter integration in our Teams application for this particular feature coming in the next quarter.
That's awesome. Right. Fantastic. To be continued, right?
Yeah, right. But that's just one little thing. So
right, absolutely. Well, and we call that friction because those are just things that always felt like busy work, but you knew that you had to do them. So they're things that people didn't necessarily want to have to do. So, what we're seeing is we're able to, be more present in meetings, capture the information more efficiently and effectively, which is, enabling, the project managers and the project team to focus on what's really important.
Yeah.
So the next area that we wanted to kind of look at was the planning. So now that more administrative, tactical kind of stuff is being addressed, there's a lot of opportunity for planning capabilities to be enhanced. So now again, technology, what we have today is one layer, AI is another layer on top of it. Where could we see that going? I mean, we know that capacity planning has always been a challenge. We're getting better at that. We're being able to see across projects, which was a gap years ago. And but now we can start looking at requirements and see where those requirements are gapping. So utilizing tools like AI. Now we've had this conversation before. If you use those AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or things like that, it seems like they have a need to tell you 20 things to do when maybe you're just asking them for one. So giving them an entire requirements document might give you a whole lot more work than you thought. So learning how to interact with technology and AI to get to this next level, I think is going to be important. So like in the case of requirements clarification, like I said, you could throw your requirements into ChatGPT and see what it comes back with and where they think the gaps are. You can also, throw in your 20 requirements and it produces a big document. It may or may not be too much or enough. It depends on the organization. So we all know that organizations have standards. Projects are all different sizes. Complexity will vary. So trying to make sure you're interacting with that technology in the right way to not give you too much information or not enough information. Also breaking down tasks. We've always learned within our project management methodology that you break down the task to the level that you need to manage to, so some of these tools might go way too granular, give you too many tasks, or maybe they won't go far enough. We know that is a knowledge base that you have as a project manager on how deep do you have to go. If do you give a task saying create a test plan to one person, or do you need that to be broken out into 3 different categories of test plans? So knowing that balance that needs to be managed to is important. Okay. Somebody want to say?
No, I was just going to say that I think that's where that human element still has not been replaced, right? In that I know my team, I know how granular they need to be. We were kind of joking about this idea that you may spend more time prompting for what your output's trying to be than it would be to just knock it out yourself as the expert in that space, right? So finding that balance is really important.
And if you have templates and stuff that have worked in the past, there's probably no need to modify them. But, you can always try it and see. We're just trying not to, we're trying to find the biggest bang for our buck, right? We're trying to find places that we can enhance our technological capabilities and make us move faster,
Mm-hmm.
So maybe even things where you're looking at defect logs and how that interacted with requirements. That might be an interesting way to look at it too. Did my requirements miss the fact that I had these defects? Possibly, right? The other one is dependency spotting. This one's an interesting one too. Dependencies are a hard discussion with teams. A lot of times, if you're doing something new, that the dependencies aren't necessarily always clear as to what needs to come first, because you may not have the skill set. I mean, if you just think about tech stacks nowadays, there might be 40 different products in there. And, I wouldn't know every single dependency, so that's one area that I think could be very valuable in expanding, the use of AI to help people understand where there might be some dependencies that we need to think about, because dependencies, if you miss them, what's going to happen to your project? Probably going to be expanded. It's going to go right? Yeah. So places like that might help you identify some of those risks, some of those dependencies, be awesome. And also helping build the WBS. I know we're going to go through that here in a second. So building that WBS is, somewhat of a tactical process, but you need to have the knowledge of your organization, of the project that you're doing, but technology can help us do more there. And then scope changes. If there's a scope change, what else is going to be impacted? And that also plays to some of those dependencies and those the hidden problems that we may not see the first time, second time, third time through. Use technology to help at least bring it up to the forefront so you can make an educated decision as to whether or not you need to respond to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah. In Project Insight, and again, to Diane's point, there's lots of ways you can do this, right? I can go to ChatGPT. I can go to Gemini. PMI has the Infinity tool, which actually does a really nice job of this as well, and creating your WBS. The real value in doing it in the tool that you're executing your projects on is it's there for you to use, right? I don't need to go in here and then, come in and import my tasks from another application. I can just come into Project Insight and say, hey, I need to build a template. I need to build a process. We're going to then ask things like, what are you trying to do? How long do you have? What roles are involved? Do you have specifically phases or milestones that you need to hit with that? And then to Diane's earlier point, how complex do you need to have that be? Do I need it to be really simple where I'm just saying, build foundation, build structure, put roof on, everybody's happy? Or do I need to get really in depth about ordering materials and all of these kinds of things? And that's why we've put in this concept of, project complexity here in our WBS or work breakdown structure generator. With that said, I can then use kind of the magic of AI to say, generate this for me, which what will happen is it will create what we call what if scenario with that AI prompt that we did, right? So here are the pieces that I needed to do to execute that project plan. I can have that human element come in here and review to make sure that these steps look right. And if they're not, I can go right back to the drawing board and create another variation of that to compare those against one another, even to say, version 2 on a simple gave me a better piece than what the modest did. But then I can execute on this plan, whether turning that into a template or letting this be that one-off project plan, which is really helpful for individuals in our organization who may not have that same level of skill set that I do as the primary project manager, right? I can just come in here and say, help me build this out so that I can go to my boss and work it through, right? So
yeah, I mean, the goal isn't to replace what you would normally do on your own, but to just jumpstart it so you could get this done faster.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I'm going to ask a question about this. Does it utilize any history from within Project Insight to get the durations and stuff?
So we're talking about iterations.
Time.
Yeah, that's on the roadmap for the future of what this will do. So
more to come.
Yeah, part of the challenge of doing these kinds of things is the more data you feed at the AI, the more it takes there's a balance between getting it done quickly and then overwhelming the AI with too much input. So
and then you're just going to get bad data.
Basically.
Yep.
Right.
So, but this does, I've used this myself now a few times because it can really help at least jumpstart your process from, instead of looking at a blank slate of what you need to do. And of course, the traditional way of doing this is get everybody in a room and we do the sticky note process to build out a work breakdown structure, or you take an existing template that you had. But this is a way to get started for something maybe you don't, like it's a new project you have never done before.
Well, or even you start with this and you have a session that validates it, right? You still, because there's always the concern, and I'll always go to some of those risks that, we've got now, all these subtasks and we've got, 12 tasks and it's going to get assigned to somebody and somebody's going to look at it one day and say, I don't know what this is, so because if we don't pay attention and validate what we're doing, we're either going to have people doing work that they don't know what they're doing, or we're going to have them do work that's not needed, So AI will produce, these schedules and these WBSs, but it's up to the team to know whether or not the step is actually needed for that particular project. So if you're creating build a house in Florida or build a house in Greenland, it's not going to be the same. So, and then the process and the dependencies may be very different. And you're not going to put a basement in a house in Florida.
Yeah. I mean, that's why AI is never going to replace your job because it just gets you, it's going to get you part of the way down the field, basically.
Right. But if you leverage it and use it as the discussion point, because I've always been a fan of never going to a meeting without something to touch and feel and look at.
Yeah.
That's a huge benefit to be walking into a meeting to make that meeting more effective because you have a starting place.
One of the other points I think that you just mentioned, Diane, is, what do I do with this, right? I have this idea of what it is, but what does that actually mean? Mm-hmm. Another place that we've enabled AI is around the description box here, which this is optional. You don't need to get in the weeds of what you do for each of these tasks, but you can. And I can allow AI to help me generate what that is, or to summarize it, or to make it better than me just typing in a few different kind of bullet points, right? So it's another place where, just what we're talking about. It's about speed. It's about enhancement. I don't need to go back to you, Diane, and say, what the heck does this mean? Because it can be spelled out right here for us.
Yeah, so this description you're seeing here came from the AI, from the generation of the work breakdown structure. So not only did it give you the name of the task and the duration, it did give you a description. And from here, you can use the AI features to expand on that, summarize that, check the grammar, all those other things. Paste your own info into there and use the AI from that.
And AI will be much better at writing sentences than most of us, because
I disagree. But
what? The writing
I said I disagree.
Oh, well, you can disagree with that.
Steve's a grammar hawk. He's a grammar hawk. When
you're trying to put a schedule together and you're trying to do it all manually,
Well, for sure it'll be better if you're in a hurry. It'll be better than you, maybe, but
so we'll see. All good. So you don't like its grammar check, huh, Steve?
Well, no. I mean, it just depends. But yeah,
it just depends. Okay, all good.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is a great feature that we've added to the tool. This is just these things we're showing you are just kind of the beginning of where we're going with the AI in Project Insight, of course, and obviously there's more going to be developed by everybody. And the other interesting thing about AI is, it's really hot right now still, the conversation, and I personally don't see AI as a replacement for any of these traditional things you still need. Like, for example, your budget, you're not going to ask AI like, hey, am I on my budget here? You really need the numbers to add up. We have customers that need it down to the penny for whatever reason. So AI is definitely not a replacement for what you already use. It's an enhancement. It's a union of these tools together.
Yeah. And you got to use them smartly. Totally agree.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, first we talked about just, friction, and now we're talking about enhancing the planning, with all of these great tools, and, hopefully we find, those dependencies more easily. Hopefully we don't skip steps in our project because we're creating that WBS. Hopefully we're clarifying those requirements and trying to be better at putting those requirements in so we don't have many defects. So there's a whole lot that I see that we can benefit. This is one area where, though, you got to be very careful with regard to going down a rabbit hole too far, because if you're trying to speed up the process, you could be impacting the process if you get too much down a rabbit hole. And we've all done that before, right? Go down a rabbit, just know when you do. Just know when you do. And then, other things that are out there that we're seeing organizations focus on, we're seeing more interest in, as I said earlier about constraints on resources. there's ideas out there on being able to take project history and be able to assign resources to the person or persons or teams that have a history of better success. I mean, there's some interesting things that you can do with AI as it relates to resourcing, like, comparing teams, etc. That doesn't necessarily speed things up. But if you get it to the right person that has done this before, that knows how to do it, then that might be a really good way to speed up the process. Early warning dashboards. I mean, we do that all the time now. There's all kinds of rules out there within Project Insight. What are the things that, something changes real time, we can immediately know that there's a problem. Where could that go with AI? Maybe it's more on the notifications. Maybe it can fix some problems. If there's, I was at a conference on cybersecurity, and there was a whole conversation about utilizing AI to not only detect, but to fix certain things immediately after they happen. So it's not like, warning somebody and then they have to go respond to that warning 3 hours later. There are ways to leverage AI to actually respond to those warnings really fast. So that's an opportunity for speeding things up. We're going to go over some of these what if scenarios. I think the stuff that Project Insight is doing with what if scenarios is fantastic. It's how can we make better decisions by looking at options in a real-time manner. Doesn't require AI, but these are capabilities that are coming into the forefront into the product, like Project Insight, that are going to be great enhancements to the efficiency and effectiveness of our teams.
I think what you said is really meaningful, Diane, because AI is not the silver bullet for everything, right? Which I think is kind of the hot topic right now. There's, just that good old fashioned automation that can help speed up what we may be doing as of today comparatively, right? So we're here, we're on a project plan that's in flight, and there's a couple parts here that we're going to talk about. The first one is the fact that within Project Insight, I've got my 3 resources on this particular task, and I can see the effort that they're going to expand over the duration of that task. If I try to save this, I can be met with warnings that say, hey, you're going to over allocate Daniel here by, 128% of what they should be. Are you sure you want to do that? Right. So I can choose to say, yeah, we'll bury Daniel. Good luck, Daniel. That kind of thing if I want. Right. If I care to, I can.
Steve's name on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Steve's used to it though. Daniel's not. Daniel's going to be sweating it out, right? So, I can show the capacity for these resources during this time and see, oh yeah, they are going to be overburdened, and then use Project Insight's AI tools to say, find me an alternate resource that has more bandwidth, but more importantly, the skill set to be able to accomplish this task, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I want to note that this is the capacity across the whole system, not just this project. You can, there you go. Now you can see all the different things on here that are causing Daniel to be over. And whether this is already a committed task or one you're thinking about adding into your project, you can get this information right now. So this can help you also, definitely help you out in not having to go look at some other place to see, okay, what's this impact going to be?
Yeah,
that's right.
It's amazing tool. Absolute amazing tool.
The other part that you mentioned there, Diane, was like that early warning, right? And the ability to notify people, hey, are there problems? And, we do have this ability to come in here and say, show me automatic health indicators for how we're performing, right? And this is going to hit the KPIs such as the schedule, the hours, the monetary piece, and we can differentiate that between what's billable if we're doing client work and what we're going to take on as ourselves, right? So you can let all of these automatic health indicators kick on at the granular level of my particular task in the summary, Or I'm going to jump up a rung into a portfolio view where I can see lots and lots of different projects, and I can still have that indicator let me know how we're doing on the group of these, right? So in that way, I can know what I need to be keeping my eye on. And we'll talk about notifications in a minute, have notifications go out for each of those.
Yeah, and what's great is these are just calculated automatically. So all you really need to do to take advantage of these types of features is just keep your project plan up to date, which you're normally supposed to do anyway, right? So
and that discipline should already be there.
Right.
Basically, keep your project plan up to date. Hopefully you have your resources collaborating with you, because that really makes a big difference. If you're collaborating together and they're marking their tasks off, you're not having to go ask them, are you done yet? Obviously that still works, but if your team is actually collaborating with you, logging their time, if you're doing time tracking, making their tasks up to date in the tool, those indicators can just tip you off if there's something you need to look at deeper. And in our tool too, we actually let the PM give the final say on what the health is. This health tool that Matt's showing is really for you and your benefit, not necessarily what's going to be reported to executives at the end of the day.
The other one is it's configurable, that those thresholds are configurable as well, right? You don't have to say 10%, 20%. You can decide where those are going to start, shining the lights on issue. So
that's correct. Yeah, it's configurable what the rules of those indicators will be.
That's right.
Yeah, and when you think about all of this particular section that we're talking about, it is about speed of decision making, speed of warning, speed. So really what ends up happening is your people doing the work are spending 90+% of their time doing the work, not in decision making discussions, not in researching, who has the capacity to do something. The system's giving you that information. So the decision making, speeding up the decision making, is allowing people to spend more time on the deliverables that are necessary for the project, which by definition then could collapse, how much time you need for a sprint.
Yeah, I mean, and just like that view that Matt was showing you, where he went to the program and the portfolio, and he saw all the projects in that portfolio. Something like this is what people do in Excel all the time. One at a time, if they're not using a PM tool. So just getting your stuff all organized under one roof is a big help. And the good thing is that, as we go forward with AI, we're going to be able to do a lot of things with that information aggregated in one place. Again, assuming that you want that turned on. We forgot to mention in Project Insight, you can globally turn it off if you have some security needs, but you can opt in or out for various features.
And that really applies to any of the feature sets that we discuss within the tool, right? You can use some or all of these. It's really up to you and the organization.
Yeah.
I think that's also a really valid point, Steve, in that I can do all of this in Excel, right? I'm going to do a what if scenario right now, and I could theoretically also do that in Excel if I wanted to. But the piece of having it all centralized is I can now come to my executive meetings and say, hey guys, we have a new scenario or a new option to do some work. We are going to try to bring this project into the fold. I can say include this in my particular report that I'm looking at, which is about my global resource allocation. I want to see what sort of impact this is going to make. And then I can run this report with that what if scenario there and understand that if I bring that project on, my accountant team here, who you can see this little gray bar, is going to have 120 additional hours of work on their plate during this time window. And, in this particular case, it's going to be okay. We're not going to turn anybody red. It's going to just, be work that we're able to execute on. So the win again is, it's taking all of those different pieces, and I can do more than one simulation. I can run variations on this one or look at 10 projects against one another here to decide what we're going to do next year or next month or otherwise. But again, it's all in one central location here.
Yeah,
So,
and what's great, I mean, we kind of brushed over it really quickly, that what if scenario, if you pull that simulation back up,
yep.
what we're saying is you can include or exclude a project, but then you can include or exclude a specific scenario within the project. So option A or option B, and weigh that. And each of those could be different project plans that are either not started at all, or one has a change in it and the other one has a different change in it, meaning like where the dates are, who the resources are, all those things can be modified without committing them. And then this area lets you take a look at what does that mean for my whole capacity.
That's
And,
awesome.
and and I think that that can tell that executive story, right? Kind of we've talked about in previous meetings of prioritization. I may have a leader come down and say, "I want this done right this second," and then you can come tell them this story and say,
Yeah.
"Look, we can accommodate that, but it's going to come at a cost of X, Y, and Z," right?
Yeah,
With that.
it'll make you over allocated, and so which project do we have to pull off here? You know,
Again,
those
better
kinds of
decision making.
questions.
Yep, better decision making, and,
Yep.
and hopefully that means that those decisions are helping our organization grow in the right way.
Yeah.
And so if we go back, like
Hmm.
all of the stuff that we've talked about today so far, there's so many options for us to target to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of our organizations. What is it that we really need today? Where is it? Where are the places that we can see the best, biggest impact? So there's a lot of things that we can do. Now they don't come without concerns. I mean, we're all as project managers, we have to do our risk management, right? So there are a lot of things that are going on right now. All the AI, people are trying it everywhere. We're learning a lot. If you don't try it, you're not going to learn. We're finding that if there's unclear outcomes, if what you're wanting to deliver, like, we talk about the different prompting of the AI, if you're not clear, you're going to get information that's not accurate at the outset. Um, every project is different, so you do have to you don't want it treating every single thing exactly the same. So how are you describing those differences? Um, Also, too, if you have broken processes already and you throw AI on top of it, you're not necessarily going to help yourself. You might be adding a whole lot more rework by throwing AI on top of broken processes. And, we all have plenty of tools. And one thing that's really cool about how Project Insights system work is that it's all kind of under, like you said, Steve, under one roof. But the more tools we use, then you're cutting and pasting and swivel chairing, and how much inefficiency are you adding because you're choosing to expand the use of different tools. So those are other areas to be very cautious of. And we talked about it too. Like, where is the human judgment most important? That would be a very good conversation to have in an organization. Where is that human touch, human decision making process most critical in your organization? And
Yeah.
that's a place that you stay away from, right?
Yeah, and you just mentioned like too many tools, too many integrations. It's one of the reasons why Project Insight does work with Jira natively and Microsoft DevOps natively, because so many project teams need to have, a portfolio project management tool like Project Insight, but also they still need to use their agile specific tools.
Hmm.
So it's one of the reasons why we've done that, to help with that. And you're still not, even with the best software in the world, you're not going to get away from at least sometimes using Excel or Power. If you can use Power BI over Excel, that's better, but it's a little bit trickier setup. But getting back to how to use AI, well, AI can help you with your Power BI, or help you do some things that are like light coding, that maybe you're not, maybe you're haven't done that in your life, but these AI tools are actually pretty good at, hey, there's this REST API that I want to integrate with. I'm not a developer, but what's the call I need to make in my Power BI scenario? If you prompt it right, it can actually help you get some of these things done.
That's a really good point, because so often we get used to the tools we're using, but we really don't use all of its features.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, I can't speak. Being able to inquire with regard to how to leverage a tool that you have today
Hmm.
better, um, could enlighten you as to ways to be more efficient just with the existing tools you have.
Definitely. I mean, and this does it never it's not a replacement for what you're normally doing, but it can definitely make it easier for you to do your job, or more open. And I always like to go, before I ask somebody now, I'm always going to just go, assuming it's a question I can ask, of course. We didn't really talk yet about the security and the guardrails, but assuming that you're not disclosing anything, the AI can really be your assistant,
Hmm. Exactly.
especially for technical things like, how do I access this REST call? The other day, actually, a customer had a question, sent an email in, and just out of curiosity, I was like, well, which bots understand the Project Insight API? The Google one got it right, and Claude got it right, and ChatGPT was really close. And I could have done it. I could go research and look at the API myself and go, what's the name of that property? But the the fact that it's all on the internet now, these bots can figure out, using the deep knowledge queries, can construct the correct API call that you might need for
That's
a
awesome.
report. Yeah, it's cool.
That's
So
awesome.
and even if it's wrong, it still made it faster for you, because
Got you
now you
started.
have an example, right? It's easier to take an example and fix
Yeah.
it
Then
than
you then
start
if
from
and
scratch.
it didn't work, so then throw it over into the other one and say, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think we're
Well,
getting
let's wrap
closer.
this up because we're running out
Yeah.
of time on this particular
All right.
topic.
Well,
We could go
there's
on
always
forever.
well, we could go on forever. Yeah. There's other pitfalls, that we want to, we
Yeah.
all can anticipate. Garbage in, garbage out. We're all seeing that. Like I said, we're all trying it, and so keep trying it, right? But just be very conscious about what you're looking at, and then making sure one of the things we've always said in project management circles is don't do things for doing them sake, right? There has to be a purpose, so like I said, that the chat GPTs and stuff will give you 20 things to do, but do I really need to do all 20? What's necessary for what I'm working on? And then the whole change management that
Mhm.
doesn't go away. No matter what you do, you got to get people to utilize the tools, and we've got to be sensitive to getting the operational changed, getting the business processes changed, getting the people's mindsets changed. There's a lot of work to do right now. I think we're in the mode of just trying as much stuff as we can, and kind of throwing a little spaghetti on the wall.
Although I think it's really important to kind of qualify that with make sure you're adhering to organizational policy as well as it pertains to data, right?
Of course.
Because there's the dualness of this where you can't just put your head in the sand and say we're not going to do it, right? Because you're going to then get outpaced, right? Is
Yeah,
really what it's going
you'll
to
be
boil
left
down
behind.
to.
You'll be
Yeah,
left
but
behind.
and or your employee, your workforce who is feeling the pressure to do more is then going to use applications that maybe your security team doesn't want them using, right? So it is really important that as an organization you have this in your mind and you're putting in these policies and informing people so they know what tools to use and what licenses we're providing so that way we do keep our IP and our integrity and our customer data intact, right? That's a really important part of that as well.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to keep all of those concerns, top of mind to make sure that we're delivering on the right, initiatives. And it really comes down to delivering outcomes. There's going to be a time when we're all going to be trying different things, and it's going to be really fluid. And it's kind of feeling that way right now. But in the long run, organizations are going to want to know what's the ROI on the project that you're implementing. What are you trying to accomplish? If it's eliminate those administrative time spent, is it improving our decision making so that we can fit more into a sprint, or is it maximizing our resources to make sure we have the highest quality work out there? Really get laser focused as to what you're trying to accomplish, because I guarantee you, even while you're in the project for improving that the scalability or the speed for which you work, people are going to go down rabbit holes. And if you don't have a clear understanding as to where you're heading and why you're heading there, you're going to end up wasting more time than you are improving the time that you're trying to improve. Yeah, so I mean, it's it's always interesting to work with organizations and understand where their challenges are, and if they but the first question I always ask is, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, where do you want to go? And if they can't articulate it, then you have to help them get to the point where it's clear and they have clarity. So that's kind of the bottom line here, is lots of things that we can do, but work towards getting clarity before you start. Mm-hmm. So the last thing we wanted to just kind of recommend to you guys to try, after this session, take one of your messy meetings and, turn it into your decisions, actions and risks, on Project Insight. If you got Project Insight, and see if you can do that within 60 seconds, give it a try. Trial and error is a good thing. Or the second thing, maybe convert one of your vague requests into an acceptance criteria and test cases. This is where we're talking about requirements. See what the AI can do with it. Or produce an executive ready weekly status from several projects. This is the fun one, because it's like doing it individually for every project, but if I want to sign an executive level one that highlights the key things that exec should be concerned with, that would be an interesting, exercise. And finally, run a mini retro from the last sprint. What slowed us down? Let the AI help you through that retrospective. So these are just some ideas that we figured we would leave today's session on, giving you some things to do to maybe give it a try. If you haven't tried it already, we'd love to get your feedback on it. And where you see the most beneficial uses of AI to help speed up your process.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
As always, if there are questions, please feel free to use the chat. The other part that I would state here is that if you're looking for ways in which you can put these pieces in work for your organization, reach out to Diane. Yep. She's more than happy to go from that consultancy perspective and show, those baby steps of, we've prioritized 1, 2, and 3. How do we get there, right? How do we actually make that execute? If you're interested in how the feature sets that you were viewing today can be put to work for your organization, and you are an existing customer of ours, reach out to your account manager. They're going to be happy to work through that with you. If not, please reach out to sales@projectinsight.com. We're happy to show how we can give you a complete picture of your organization-wide work. Then get your phones ready, for the QR code, which is up there. So go ahead and scan that. As it states, they'll be sent out to you here shortly. We really appreciate everybody's time.
This has been great. A lot of fun, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks,
it's
Diane.
a deep topic, right? I think we could do 3 more, like you said. So please feel free to join our next PDU session, which is really tied specifically around the right PMP tool for your nonprofit, right? There's a lot of similarity between the for-profit sector, right? That private sector or public or otherwise, but there are nuances in. We've got greater callings, we've got goods that we're providing the world, and I'm going to love to walk you through that on April 15th.
That sounds awesome. I might join you on that one.
Yeah, please do. And then lastly, Project Insights, Where Your Cape to Work podcast. We're into our next season. Please do stream that on the platform of your choice. I know, some people like Spotify. I'm a big Apple podcast guy myself, but wherever you like to listen, we are there, and we would like you to do so. Thank you so much, and we wish everyone well.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great week.